Fuel and Emissions Test 2. And this is from chapters 5 through 7 of the textbook. Now, if you're not reading these chapters, you're doing yourself a disservice. You know, it's an expensive textbook. You are going to be using that textbook when you do your final exam. You know, so you're going to be, you know, when I was in college, I went through this course, I think it's Sociology 203 or whatever it was. It was Courtship, Marriage, and the Family. I went through that without a textbook. But you can't do that with these courses here and expect to get out of it alive. Now, let's start with question number 1. Winter blend gasoline. A, can cause engine drivability problems if used during warm weather. B, has a higher Reid vapor pressure. Vaporizes more easily than summer blend gasoline, or all of the above. Summer blend. Okay, what about vapor lock? Number 2. Vapor lock can occur how? A, if a fuel line is restricted. B, as a result of excessive heat near fuel lines. C. D, both A and B, or D during neither A or B. During neither A or B? That's strange. So what do you think about that? C. That's going to be actually, what did you say? Did you say C?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now, where does the fuel line have to be restricted in order for that to happen?
Near the engine.
Okay, what is vapor lock anyway? How would you describe that?
That's when the fuel turns into vapor and it won't get into the injectors.
Actually, you got a bunch of air bubbles in your fuel line, right? Let me tell you something else. You're out here, you go out here for a no start. You got to figure out why one won't start, and those are the ones that you get a lot. You know, it comes in on the hook, won't start. You go out there, and you may even talk to the customer a little bit. And I said, when I'm driving this thing, and it, that's pretty gross. What is it?
Black.
Yeah. I saw him looking at that spot on his shirt, and then he smelled of it. And it turned out it was bead sealer off that tire. That was comical. I wish I had that on film. But anyway, vapor lock. If you've got like somebody says, I drove my car, when it got hot, it cut off, and I tried to start it, start and go dead, start and go dead. Well, what is it telling you when it starts, it goes dead? When it's a start and go dead, what does it tell you? It starts and it dies. It tries to start and then it dies. That's a fuel problem. How do you know it's not an ignition problem?
Because it started.
Because it starts and went dead, right? So you're thinking, okay, this is a fuel problem. Okay, so they said this little Schrader valve where you check the fuel pressure on the fuel rail. I pushed the little Schrader valve and it just fire hosed fuel out of there like a rocket. Okay, and so they felt like, well, that's not. The problem is when you see it fire hosing fuel out there like a rocket, what's going to make it do that?
There's air behind it.
A bunch of compressed air in the fuel line. That means that's your problem. Yeah, that's a.
No, this is with the key off.
Yeah, all they're doing is, or they turn it on, you know. But the long and short of it, if you just turn on the key, the fuel pump runs a couple of seconds, shuts off anyway. Well, they just want to go. They ain't trying to start it while they're doing it. But anyway, so when I mash that, gas just went everywhere. Well, if you hear them say that, you say, well, you found your problem. There's a bunch of air in the fuel line. They won't run on air. You know, most of what's in there is bubbles and foam and stuff, and they're squeezed because the pump's trying to push. And if that thing's right, whenever you push that little Schrader valve, and I'm not saying that's a good way to do that. I like to check the pressure. But if you happen to be out there where you have to do that, you mash that little thing, it'll just squirt on your hand a little bit. It shouldn't go and spray out a bunch of fuel. Vapor lock is something that was more of a problem on carburetors, though. Whenever you would have a fuel pump that was weak and you had fuel lines that were metal that were running close to the hot exhaust, and it would start boiling the fuel in the line, you'd have bubbles in there, then it would cut up and cut off and all that. So basically, that's going to be C. But I'm going to qualify that saying the fuel line has got to be restricted in the right place for you to have a vapor lock problem like that. Technician A, of course, you can make foam anyway. Technician A says a spark knock, ping, and detonation are different names for abnormal combustion. Technician B says any abnormal combustion raises the temperature and pressure inside the combustion chamber and will cause severe engine damage. Who's right about that? That's basically both of them are right. And spark knock. Let's draw a line between all those. What is spark knock, and how would you describe that?
It's either premature or after the fact detonation.
Piston's coming up. When's that spark supposed to happen?
Top dead center.
Well, not really. If you look at most of them, you're going to set it slightly before top dead center. Like on the even on the Bronco, it's at 10 before. It's supposed to happen early enough so that whenever that flame starts, it's given its maximum push during the proper part of the piston travel, which means it's going to have to fire before the piston gets to the top. If you got it firing after the piston gets to the top, you're going to wind up with a really hot running engine. But spark knock happens if the timing is too fast, if it advances too much, and the piston is coming up and it fires when the piston is still far enough down that the flame punches the top of the piston and tries to stop it. And that's basically going to cause the piston to, you know, you're here, see that piston's going to make that, it's going to make it, that flame front is going to hit that piston, it's going to make that, and people call it valve rattle. You ever heard people like that? That ain't what it is. It ain't got nothing to do with the valves. It's got to do with the flame front hitting the top of that piston. It comes together and it makes it sort of a ringing noise on all that. All right, so the next thing you got here is ping, which is akin to that. Now, ping can happen, you know, you could get these terms all crossed up, spark knock, ping, and detonation. They're so close to being the same thing that it's, you know, you can split hairs. I've actually had people email me after they watch one of these YouTube videos and talk about, well, tell me the difference between this, and this, spark knock, detonation, ping. I thought this, and they're trying to, you know, it's a hair splitting thing. Detonation is basically, have you ever driven an engine that was overheating? Or, I mean, like running too hot?
That's what that bug was doing.
You hear the noise, you hear it start to make rattling noises because of the detonation. The heat is actually causing the gas to light off. Another thing that can cause that, if you've got carbon deposits that have built up on your cylinder head and it has raised the compression because it's taking up room in the combustion chamber, that extra compression can cause the gas to light off before the spark happens. And you can get it for that reason. See, a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bevy of things that go together. And sometimes, if you've got all that, they call it a carbon, you know, if the carbon builds up enough, they call it a carbon knock, you know, where it makes us almost, you know, engines knocking. And that way, you know, pour a bunch of top F transmission fluid through it and soften the carbon and follow up some cold water pouring through while it's running. Don't hydraulic lock it, but you can clean the top of the pistons off that way. And that's just, you know, that's not anything that Joe do-it-yourself-at-home guy ought to do, because he's able to pour this stuff in there too fast and destroy his engine. But if you know what you're doing, you can decarbonize one with transmission fluid and water with the engine running, you know. Anyway, they make some compounds that they sell that are made for combustion chamber cleaning, you know, that you've probably seen at the parts house over there. Technician A says research octane number is higher than the motor octane number. Technician B says the octane posted on pumps is an average of the two ratings. Now, who's right about that? C is right about that. What they do is they got two different ways of measuring the octane. They got the research and motor method, and they actually, when they get those two numbers, when they put them together, you might even notice on your gas pump sometimes it'll say R plus M, you know, that's what read vapor pressure is related to that too. And we'll be talking about that again in a minute. Technician A says in going to high altitudes, engines produce lower power. You ever experienced that?
No.
Low power at high altitude? Yeah.
I've never had that happen because I don't go up in the mountains anymore.
Yeah.
In Colorado.
If you go to Colorado, it's going to run like a dog. I mean, whatever you're driving.
And on the floor, it still ain't going.
Yeah, it's just terrible. So you got to advance the ignition timing and change the mixture and stuff like that to get it to run right. That's why your racetracks are typically in low altitudes close to the coast, you know, because the cars will run better down there. All right, let me see.
Less of a headache.
Technician B says most engine control systems can compensate for the air-fuel mixture and altitude changes in altitude. That's true, but the ones that I know about can only do it up to 4,000 feet and above 4,000 feet. Now, there may be some changes that I haven't been aware of in that, but used to you had to actually do altitude modification if you were going to live above 4,000 feet. Like if you were moving from here to Denver, you know, you need to have altitude modification stuff. Now, it may be as simple now as a reflash. You know what I mean, or something like that. So, but in the old days, you'd have to ground some wires that weren't grounded and put a different crank sensor on and that kind of stuff. That's probably all gone away now, I imagine. I don't know why they couldn't. What?
You say that it runs better down low, and you have to modify it if you're living up above.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if they wanted to go on a trip, but they have to like change their stuff back to like normal?
No, if they're going on a trip, you just put up with the crappy way it runs, and then you come on back home.
Unless you take a trip for like 2 years.
Yeah, if you're going to be gone for a long time, you'd change that. But you don't have to modify it in order to get it to run. It's just not going to have a whole lot of power. You got me?
Okay.
All right. Let's see. So number 5 is going to be C. Number 6, which method of blending ethanol with gasoline is the most accurate? Sequential, splash, inline, or all of the above? I'd say,
Sequential.
yeah, inline's the best way to do it. You know, just feeding it in as it goes. You know, which can be used to measure the alcohol content in gasoline. You can either use a graduated cylinder, electronic tester, scan tool, or either A or B. Actually, electronic tester or a graduated cylinder would be the right two answers on
I was
that.
going to say, I know in the book it talked about the graduated cylinder, but then it had like an exercise after that where they actually used an electronic tester, but I never saw a scan tool.
I don't. Yeah, scan tool's not in there. That's your thing. See, he's reading his book and he's just getting good answers out of there. The scan tool, you can't tell. Now, I will tell you that the E85 cars, the flex fuel vehicles, initially had a sensor on them that the fuel would have to go through, and it would give you, it'd give the engine controller numbers telling it what the alcohol content was in the gas. The only problem was on some cars that sensor was $3,000 if it went bad, and the car wouldn't run right if it was bad. And if you had to try to buy one, you had to mortgage your car. And then those smart Alecks, they decided, somebody came up with a program and things that, why don't we just use the oxygen sensors to determine what it is? You know, and they use that strategy. Now, if you had a choice, if you had two cars that were exactly alike with the same amount of miles on both of them, and they both been equally maintained, and one was flex fuel and one was not flex fuel, which is the best one for you to buy?
Not flex fuel.
That's wrong. You know why? Because the flex fuel has got more robust injectors, a better fuel pump, a better fuel lines, and everything in it. So yes, you may not be going to use the 85, but you got a better fuel system. It's stronger and tougher. That alcohol causes problems with the plain old fuel system, but they have to make the fuel components better to put up with the alcohol. So you're getting a really higher quality fuel system.
You don't have to use the E85.
You know, you can use anything you want to. Anything up to 85% alcohol will work in that car, and you'll get better gas mileage if you put just plain gas in there anyway. Okay, let me get down here. To avoid problems with the variation of gasoline, all government testing uses what as a fuel during testing?
Indoline?
Yeah, that's going to be Indoline, yeah. Indoline. This is a point when I usually tell a story about running out of gas down there. When I was living in Port Arthur behind Texaco Research, and the guy came out there and gave me I knocked on the door of one of those research laboratories, and the guy came out and gave me a jar of toluene. He said, pour that in there and run off that. It's clear liquid. I poured it in there, boom, before it drove back down.
Really?
Yeah, it ran great too. Huh?
Does it get any better?
It ran better with that in there than it ever did with regular plain gas. That was just interesting. Well, this guy was Texaco Research. They were making gasoline and stuff. You know what I'm saying? The guy knew what he was wearing a lab coat and all this kind of stuff, and he handed me a thing.
Gonna run off that.
Avoid topping off the tank because what? A, the extra fuel increases vehicle weight and reduces performance. That's comical. The extra fuel simply spills out onto the ground. Well, that's true too, but that's not the reason. The extra fuel goes to the expansion area of the tank and is not used by the engine. It can saturate the car charcoal canister.
You told us that the other day. Remember?
That's right. We hammer on that.
That's what the motorcycle does. It's got like a secondary spill on the top, and it's got a vent that goes down next to the kickstand. So the fuel goes into that little spill area and just drips right on the ground.
Yep. And all right. So technician A says lower octane fuel in vehicles designed for premium fuel will cause serious engine damage. Okay. So let's get this back down here where I can read it better. Wait a minute. Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me mid-question. All right.
Mid-question.
Yeah, not mid-question. Technician B says some octane boosters will cause discoloration of the porcelain on the spark plug tip. Who's right about that?
B.
That's actually B. You're not typically going to have serious engine damage from using lower octane fuel, although you may get pinging, and the reason for that is 87 octane fuel is more explosive than 93 octane fuel. 93 octane fuel burns slower, and here I will go so far as to say that if your car is set up to run on 87 octane fuel, you should not use 93 octane in it. There was one day this friend of mine was working on this big Bronco that was like a 92 or 3 model. He was working I kind of trained the guy, and he was doing drivability work like I was. He was in the service bay facing mine. And he had this Bronco in there, and he started it up, and it'd pop and snort and cut up and die. And he started up, and it'd pop and snort and cut up and die. And after it warmed up, it did okay, you know. But if you cranked it cold, it'd pop and snort and backfire through the intake. And, you know, that's induction backfire, they call it. And he fought with it for a while. He was kind of a hard-headed guy. And I said, Mark, I want you to go up there and ask the service writer to bring the customer out, because the customer was waiting. I says, and don't ask any leading questions other than to say, what kind of fuel are you using? And I guarantee you they're going to tell you I'm using 93 octane. And it's set up to use 87. Because what you're hearing sounds to me like they've put premium fuel in a vehicle that's supposed to run on 87 octane. And so he went up there and they said, oh, we're putting the most expensive fuel we can buy. The premium. I'm like, you'll drive that out and put 87 octane in it, all these troubles will go away. We don't even need to work on it. You know, that kind of thing happens. A little bit of diesel fuel. If somebody puts a little diesel fuel in a fuel, it'll do like that. It'll run, it'll pop and snort and cut up and try to die when it's cold. And if you, I mean, the mix is really peculiar. If somebody got just the right mix on an 89 Taurus that was brand new, belonged to a rental car outfit one time, and they put some diesel in it. And when you crank it up cold, you just barely could keep it alive. You know, and if you fooled with it and let it die too many times when you were trying to crank it and recrank it, it would grease the spark plugs up to where it wouldn't even start, and you'd have to clean them. But boy, whenever that thing got to where it was running, it was idling, there was a little bit of smoke coming out of the tailpipe, white smoke. And I said, that's weird for a new car. And the shop foreman was, you know, scratching his head. He didn't know what to do about it. And there was a guy from Ford down there walking around looking at some stuff. He was a field service engineer. And his name was Stuart. And I said, Stuart, what do you think about this car over here? He goes, well, I don't know, check the compression. Well, a Taurus is supposed to have, a new Taurus would have about 160 pounds across the board. That one had 210. The compressor was 210 pounds. And I told Stuart, I said, the compression is 210 pounds on every cylinder. He said, what is that all about? I said, I don't know. And so, but that's when I got the fuel on my hand, and I waved it until I got dry, and I smelled diesel. So I disconnected the fuel lines coming from the tank, and I hooked our injector cleaning machine with fresh gas from somewhere else, and it ran like a dream. But I will tell you this, if you could keep that thing alive, and you get out there on the road, I don't know how they got that mix just exactly right, but that thing would smoke a regular Taurus. It would fly. I mean, it had all kinds of extra compression. It was real strong. Well, I told that story in here one day, and this goofy son of a gun went and had to go to his full Ford Ranger and put a bunch of diesel in it to see if he could make it run better. What a goofball. He couldn't get the mix exactly right. And, you know, he didn't have that. It's hard to duplicate that, you know. Okay, so here we go. Let me tell you about the Octane booster. Octane booster will foul the spark plugs. And first time I ran into that, you know, the CS Gray 71 Thunderbird my brother had, it's on the middle computer out here.
Yeah.
Had a 375 horsepower 429 in it. Most of the Thunderbirds had a weaker 429 in it. His had the Mustang engine in it. I mean, it came from the factory like that. The only one that did that. And it was just terrible, you know. The way it ran, it was a beautiful car and everything was in good shape, but it was cutting up and skipping. When I pulled the plugs out, it looked like they had rusty red stuff on them. It was just like, I mean, they looked vaguely similar to that rusty look, but this one actually does have rust on it. But they didn't look like rust, but they had that color on the porcelain. And I determined that my brother was using Octane booster in it, pouring a bunch of that stuff that he bought in there. And I'd seen that on a Mustang too, that was like a 2004 model or something. This guy had put a bunch of Octane booster in it. It didn't have very many miles on it, but it was surging and cutting up. Pull the plugs out, you could tell that they were all messed up by Octane booster. And you know, the old hot rod people used to put mothballs in the gas tank. That would change the. Well, you heard about that, huh?
Yeah, buddies of mine have done that.
Yeah. Okay.
Kaboom!
Adding up to 10% ethanol to gasoline can increase the fuel's what?
Volatility.
Yeah, volatility. Reformulated gasoline contains at least how much oxygen by weight? That's 2%, 2%. B. Which of these symptoms may be caused by excessive ethanol in the fuel? 13. Yeah, that's right. You know, you go cutting up and shutting off. Kind of like what I was describing earlier. Ethanol can be produced from what products?
All.
Yeah, there you go. Any of those. Corn, switchgrass, sugar cane. And 15E85 means the fuel's made from, what's that?
E85?
Yeah, 85% ethanol.
85 gasoline, 15 ethanol.
No, the other way around. 85 ethanol and 15 gasoline. Yeah. It's mostly ethanol. And that's what the flex fuel vehicle can burn, anything up to 85%. You know, the ones that say flex fuel have a little leaf on them or whatever. Number 16, a flex fuel vehicle can be identified by how? Any of them, VECI, emblems on the side, front, and rear, VIN, or any of the above. But I will tell you this, they're not all marked plainly. One of our state cars is a flex fuel vehicle, but you will not know it.
Which one is it?
The Dodge Stratus is a flex fuel, believe it or not. You can look at the serial number, and the 8th digit tells you it's a flex fuel, as I remember. But anyway.
What is VECI?
Oh, vehicle emission control information decal. You know, the one under the hood that's got all your spark plug gap and the vacuum schematics. Huh?
Once you said emission.
Yeah, that's right. Vehicle emission control information. How much compressed natural gas does it require to achieve the energy of 1 gallon of gasoline? That's a sort of a loaded question.
Cubic feet.
No, 122 cubic feet. You were just guessing wild, weren't you?
That would have been my fourth guess.
Yeah. Producing liquid fuel from coal or natural gas uses what process? That's a hard one, isn't it? Fischer-Tropsch. That's C. Technician A says the stoichiometric ratio for gasoline is about 9 to 1.
What?
Hang on. So what? Read that again.
Technician A says the stoichiometric ratio for gasoline is about 9 to 1. Technician B says the stoichiometric ratio for ethanol is about 9 to 1.
I know gas.
Who's right about that?
16.7 to 1?
Well, 14.7 to 1. Yeah, that's what gas is. B is the right answer on that. Now remember, that's a ratio by weight, not volume. Got me? Volume's a totally different critter. Here's another thing I was talking about the other day. Weight and volume come together on water. 16 ounces of water weighs 1 pound. Yeah, and an ounce of water weighs an ounce of weight. And that's what, you see what I'm saying? An ounce of water weighs an ounce. Well, my wife was confused by that because she was wanting to know if I've got 16 ounces of whatever kind of dry measure it was she was doing, some kind of grain or something. She says, is that a pound? I said, are you talking about 16 fluid ounces like in a fruit jar? No, that's a different deal. 16 ounces of wheat in a fruit jar is not going to weigh as much as 16 ounces of water. You know what I mean? The volume and the weight go different directions on everything except water. You know, so water is typically the basic, even in metric, you know, a cubic centimeter of water weighs 1 gram and that kind of stuff. So that's where you're headed with that. All right. Let's see. On the alternative fuels listed in the text, which of them has the highest octane? What do you think, guys? Is that a good answer? You like that? How about compressed natural gas? Believe it or not. CNG. All right, let me see if I can flip this piece of paper over. What color is diesel fuel dyed if it's for off-road use only? Yeah, it's typically red. And what's the problem with using off-road diesel in your on-road diesel vehicle?
It's still got impurities in it.
It's actually makes gel and wax, and it's not suitable. Like when I used to work on those Power Stroke diesels when I was at a Ford dealership, if they came in there and said this thing's not running right, and I screwed the top off that big old fuel filter and I saw red diesel fuel in there, I'd put the top back on, park it outside, and say, you need to run about 2 or 3 tanks full of real diesel fuel for this thing before I'll even touch it. Because basically that gel and that off-road diesel clogs up the injectors on them pickup trucks and stuff. Works fine if you're working on something that's big and yellow like a Caterpillar, you know, but if you're working on a diesel that's made to run on the highway. Furthermore, it's not taxed, so you're kind of breaking the law. But you know who's the most egregious offender on that situation? People that these county ambulances, by the stroke of somebody's pen, they'll just say, we're going to use off-road diesel to save money. And they bring those ambulances in there running like crap. And we you know, they have to try to straighten that hogwash out. Okay.
Ambulances are diesels?
Huh?
Ambulances are really so.
All right. Let me see. So it's red. What clogs fuel filters when the temperature is low on a vehicle that uses diesel fuel? What do you think, guys? That's actually wax. Right? The specific gravity of diesel fuel is measured in what units? Grade number, cetane number, API gravity, or hydrometer units?
Cetane number?
Actually, it's API gravity.
API gravity.
Good guess, but not quite good enough. All right. You can tell he didn't read the chapter, right? What rating of diesel fuel indicates how well a diesel engine will start? That's the cetane rating.
Yeah.
And cetane is a clear, colorless liquid that's got a perfect combustion qualities, and it's rated at 100. That's the standard. And most of your diesel fuel is about 40. Yeah. But when they compare it to cetane, you know, cetane is really the perfect. It's like the gold standard for, you know, combustibility. Number 25, ultra low sulfur diesel fuel has how much sulfur content? 15 parts per million, which is pretty, you know, low there. E-diesel is vegetable fuel with what additive? It's got ethanol in it. Ethanol, you add ethanol to it, that's e-diesel. Biodiesel is regular diesel fuel. Biodiesel is regular diesel fuel with vegetable oil added. That's not true.
No. Like lye or something, isn't it?
Yeah. B20 diesel, biodiesel has how much regular diesel fuel?
80.
80%. He's right. He's got it. Most diesel fuel is what grade?
Grade 7.
Grade 2, actually. That's going to be a B. Most manufacturers of vehicles equipped with diesel engines allow what type of biodiesel?
B20.
Yeah, that's basically B5. Really, they're not going to allow B20 on that.
Rich,
yeah.
What was 27?
27 is let's see, biodiesel is regular diesel fuel, and this falls, yeah. All right, 31. Diesel fuel should be rated at what cetane rating?
25 to 30.
No, it's only 45 to 50 actually nowadays. It used to be about 40 everywhere you went, but they bumped it up a little bit. And 32, the higher cetane rating, the easier the engine starts when cold. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. I had, you ever seen these diesel engines when somebody's got a diesel engine out there and they're trying to start it and it's puffing out a lot of white smoke but it's not starting? What does that mean? Lots of white smoke puffing out but it's not starting. Well, to begin with, you know it's getting fuel, but the fuel's not lighting off. Okay, so, and that's when it's cold, you know?
Yeah, might get the compression.
There's typically two reasons why that kind of thing can happen on a healthy diesel engine. One thing is, the glow plug system's not working.
It's not warm enough.
Glow plugs actually, because since you're squeezing that air to, you're running it up to about 950 to 1,000 degrees, because you get 2 degrees Fahrenheit per pound of compression. You have 450 pounds of compression, you're going to have about 950 degrees Fahrenheit. But that heat that's being created by compressing that air is going to be absorbed by a cold engine. I mean, it's going to have it below the flash point for that diesel. And so the glow plugs actually heat that up so that it can bust off. And they'll burn a little bit, usually a little afterglow for just a very short time after it fires up to make sure that it's run smooth and doesn't start, you know, dropping cylinders and misfiring. Well, there's another reason it can blow white smoke too, even if the glow plug system's working right. If there's too much fuel going in there for some reason, it'll flood it. You can flood a diesel or it won't even start, because that diesel goes in there so fast that it's absorbing the heat instead of lighting off, and it can cool everything down and it won't start. Let's see.
Isn't there there's some vehicles that actually have cylinder warmers instead of glow plugs?
Well, they got a manifold heater. They'll have a grid in there. It'd be like these Dodges, a little Dodge, that Cummins diesel and the Dodge pickups.
Yeah.
They got a manifold heater instead of glow plugs.
It's not a cylinder heater, it's a manifold.
Yeah, it actually heats the manifold. You know, it heats the air up, and they have be like a grid sort of, so that with all the air going into there is nice and hot. You know.
Like a blow dryer.
Yeah, sort of, and except it's intense and it pulls lots of amps. Let's see. Those Cummins, incidentally, those Cummins diesel engines, even on their variable turbochargers, the Duramax and the Power Stroke, on their variable geometry turbochargers. They got a bunch of little vanes that move around. Technician A says that diesel fuel has more heat energy than gasoline. Technician B says grade 2 is the grade recommended for normal service in automotive diesel engines. Who's right about that? Yeah, both of them are right. Okay. Okay, to make sure everybody's on the same sheet, let's back up. Number 28 was C, 29 was B, 30 is D, 31 is C, 32 is A, 33 is C. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, 34 is C. Diesel fuel's got more heat energy than gasoline. Technician B says grade 2 is a grade recommended for normal service in automotive diesel engines, and 34 is C. Both those guys are right. But as a matter of fact, I was having a discussion with Webb in there yesterday about, do you know, and you could do the calculation on this, if I tell you that the fire goes out in a gasoline engine, in a given cylinder, the fire goes out, but by the time it reaches 24 degrees after top dead center, the fire's gone. You know, in your power stroke. Okay, so if you've got an 8-cylinder engine, let's say you got 720 degrees total, right? Okay, what's 8 times 24? 192. Is that right? Okay, so the only time you've actively got power pushing the pistons on a V8 engine, you know, using that as a benchmark, 24 degrees after top dead center, the fire has gone out, and typically that's true on just about every engine. And I'm not talking about the engines that are in the hybrids, the Atkinson, cycle engines are a little bit different. But so you got 192 degrees of actual push going on, right? Okay, how many degrees? What's 192 from 720? Do the math.
$3.75.
Huh?
528.
Yeah, 528. Where'd you get 3.75?
I divided 720 by 192.
Okay, but anyway, so what you got there, okay, so you got 528 degrees of coasting where there's nothing pushing that sucker, right? It's just depending on momentum.
Wait, now is this on a diesel or?
It's a V8. No, this is a gas burner. I'm talking gas burner now. I'm not talking diesel.
Alright, well, I was just doing a module yesterday, and Toyota was saying that the most efficient, as far as when it lights off, is 60 degrees after about that.
On the, well, now you're probably talking GDI. That's probably, if you can get it in there. You know what I mean? Like gasoline direct injection is going to be different.
Well, I mean, I'll pull up the module for you.
Yeah. You're talking about, so what we're going to do is we're going to fire our spark plug at 60 degrees after top dead center?
Well, no, that's when you need ignition, like, for it to light off.
Yeah. So I need to set my timing at 60 degrees after top dead center for it to be most efficient.
No. Timing happens with the piston is 60 degrees past top dead center.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, when does the spark plug fire?
Before that. But I'm saying, when
Yeah.
it combusts.
Yeah. I mean, is this at a what speed? Load, no load?
If it's just,
Yeah.
like, I'll pull it up for you.
Yeah. I need to see that because I want to know what they're talking about. Because I'm going to tell you something. If you've got, like, for instance, if I'm out here and I'm on any engine that I've ever worked on when I could change the timing, you know. Now, gasoline direct injection goes by different rules. You know what I'm saying? It's different because not only are you actually controlling when the gas goes in there, you know, and whether it's a stratified charge or a homogeneous charge and all that kind of stuff, but 60 degrees after top dead center, you know, is a pretty good ways after top dead center. And but now, is this an engine with variable cam timing, or is it fixed cam timing? That may have been. Now maybe there's something going on there. That one out there, you can get in that one out there when we get out of here. I'll look at it. But anyway, right now I need to finish this because I'm running out of time, and you guys need to be out there doing worksheets.
Skeletons.
Huh?
Your phrase, skeletons.
Yeah. Well, everybody's turning into a skeleton in here. Okay, now then we got. Where are we at here?
35.
Specifications for diesel fuel include what?
I found Cloud Point.
Flash point, cloud point, pour point. That's all the above, isn't it?
Sure.
Okay, we're almost through here. We have 5 more questions. Ultra low sulfur diesel fuel has a maximum of how many parts per million of sulfur?
C.
All right, C15. All right, a biodiesel blend that has 5% biodiesel in the conventional fuel is called,
D95.
well, what do you think, guys? Everybody like that answer?
D5.
B5, there you go. Vegetable oil is sometimes called what? It can be called WVO, PPO, or SVO.
Did you say D or B5?
B5, that would be A is the right answer, which is B5. Diesel fuel mixed with ethanol is called E-diesel. It's not called diesel. All right, so that's going to be C. The specific gravity of diesel fuel should be measured when a drivability concern is present. That's true. That is TRU. One of the most important things you can do if you're chasing a drivability concern is check and see what your fuel quality is like. You know, fuel quality is something that gets overlooked a lot of times, and people will throw parts at it like you wouldn't believe, trying to fix something that actually turns out to be nothing more than bad fuel. All right, it's time to hit the shop.